Welcome to the Witchy Work Wishes podcast, a place to find your weekly inspiration for bringing your personal witchcraft practice into your business, work, and office. Welcome to Witchy Work Wishes and to our first episode in our Witchcraft 201 series. Today we are talking about quantum physics and the bridge between the science world and the way witches already understand energy intuitively. And before anybody panics or reaches for the skip button, I really hope you stay with me. I promise we are not about to turn this into a college lecture or a situation where you feel you need to take notes or remember formulas. This is not that kind of a conversation. This is very much a, come sit next to me type conversation. You do not need to understand quantum physics to be a good witch. You do not need to know the science words or how any of the math works, or really to be able to explain this to someone at a dinner party. None of that is required here. What we are doing today is something much softer than that. We are just getting curious together. Now, a couple of years ago, I read the book Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza. That book lodged itself deep in my bones. It cracked something open for me about how our thoughts, our habits, and our emotional patterns aren't just things we have. They are things we are actively shaping every single day. And it planted this quiet but persistent curiosity about energy, consciousness, and how change actually happens beneath the surface. Curiosity never really left me. And honestly, it's one of the big reasons this quantum physics episode wanted to come through now. Not in a technical, like textbook kind of a way, but in that very witchy, very human way of asking how intention, focus, and belief move energy, and how we can stop living on autopilot and start choosing our magic a little more consciously. But first, before we dive all the way in, I have some things happening over here in my little corner of the world. I am officially knee-deep in the January corporate rush, the annual storm that rolls in every single year without fail. And this year, oh, you guys, this storm had some frickin' teeth. There have already been multiple bumps in the road, the kind that make your heart drop into your stomach, and I've had to pivot and adjust in ways I did not see coming. It has been one of those Januaries where the air feels heavy and every day asks for more than certainly I feel like I have to give. And the wild part is, I'm only halfway through. We are only halfway through. My deadlines are stacked in threes right now. I've got month end, quarter end, and year end. And you know what? Normally, I would love that. I'm a witch who understands the power of three, like you guys, the sacred triangle, the momentum, the magic of it all. But January doesn't always let that feel sacred. January takes that power and turns it into pressure. And no matter how many years I do this, January deadlines always test me, like they always do. And then I did something brave this year. I added coaching, and it started in January too. Not because I needed help with my corporate goals, but because I needed help with me. Now, I've talked about this repeating habit in my life a couple times now, a pattern that returns every year, year after year, like an echo, like the universe tapping me on the shoulder saying, okay, we're not done with this yet. I've always known it was there. I've always known I wanted to outgrow it. But you know what? Year after year, I'd still find myself writing it down again, adding it back onto the goal list like a lesson I could not quite cross off. But in December, when I started asking myself how I wanted to feel in 2026, something shifted. I knew I was done. Like done repeating, done dragging this same thing through another calendar year. I did not just want to change, like I really, really wanted transformation. And I also knew something else. I truly needed support to become the version of me who stays committed with it. Not like, like a motivation, but structure, accountability, someone holding up a lantern while I walk through the hard part. So I chose the coaching. And January is not the month I would normally choose to add anything new onto my schedule. For me, January is survival season, like to the core survival season. I don't have the bandwidth, emotionally, physically, psychologically, like all of it. January already demands my full body, my full focus, my full energy. But guess what? I added it anyways. And it has been such a conscious act, like carving out time that does not exist, making sacred space inside a calendar that is already overflowing. It feels like building a ritual circle in the middle of chaos and saying, well, guess what? This matters too, because I am committed. And every week, even in the storm of January, I am doing the work. I am trusting the process because this time next year, you guys, this time next year, this goal I am committed to, it will not, I repeat, it will not be on my 2027 list. I'm actually really excited about what I'm shifting this year. And not just in my schedule or my goals, but like my overall outlook. Because sometimes changing one small thing, well, it ripples through everything. It's like pulling one thread and realizing it's connected to the whole tapestry of your life. And that habit, the one that keeps showing up on my goal list year after year, I'm realizing that the real shift isn't just, like trying harder to change it. The shift is how I'm approaching it. And it hit me when I was thinking about our Decluttered Witch episode last week. I remember Marie Kondo and her big question, does this bring you joy? And if it doesn't, you don't shame it. You don't curse it. You don't fight with it. You literally just say thank you and you let it go. You release it with kindness. You honor what it once did for you and you move forward later. And you know what I realized? I want to treat this goal the exact same way. This habit I'm working on, it did serve a purpose. It wasn't random. It wasn't pointless. It came into my life for a reason and it repeated for a reason. It was fulfilling a need. It was protecting something in me. It was helping me cope, survive, soften, shield, whatever it was meant to do. And it did its job. It did exactly what it was created to do. So instead of fighting it, instead of making it the enemy, I'm totally changing my approach. I am choosing to thank it. Like, actually thank it? Because it held me up in seasons when I did not know how else to hold myself. It carried me in a way. It helped me through something. It served me when I was a past version of me. And I can respect that. I can honor that. And now my life has grown, right? I've changed. I'm building something new. And the version of me I'm becoming no longer needs that habit in the same way. So I can say thank you. And then I can release it, let it go. And honestly, that simple act, that moment of gratitude instead of resistance, has had such an impact on me. It's softened everything. It has made me feel less trapped inside the pattern, the habit, and more empowered to step forward without it. I don't know, it's like when you stop wrestling with something and instead you bless it on its way out the door. Like you finally make room for growth. And I can feel it happening. I can feel myself moving forward. And each time the habit pops back in my daily routine, I remind myself, well, this habit no longer supports the person I am becoming. I am so happy it supported me in the past, but now I need something different. And again, for January at least, for the 3 weeks we are in, I am saying thank you, but I don't need you right now. I have really, really been focusing on the feeling part of 2026, like, what I want this year to feel like in my bones. Actually, it's shaping so many things differently right now. I know, again, we're early on in the year, and my final set of goals is not yet complete. I will be doing that next weekend. But you know what? Just defining the feeling part, and this might sound really silly at first, but it is showing up in the most ordinary places, like the way I decorate my home with the seasons. From early fall through December 31st, my house is on. And not just my house, my two offices too. Like on. And I know I'm in good company with this one. You guys do this too, right? The fall decorations come out September 1st without fail. Samhain, Halloween, all of the cozy, spooky golden magic. And it stays up through Thanksgiving. And then, like clockwork, the Yule and Christmas boxes come out, and everything shifts into that twinkly, evergreen, candle lit season all the way through December 31st. I am not exaggerating when I tell you I have an actual storage shed full of boxes dedicated to this specific stretch of the year, like bins and bins and bins. It is a whole seasonal operation. And tucked inside the fall boxes every year is this long throw pillow that goes on my bed, and it says, "Give thanks." It has been part of my fall rhythm for years now. It comes out every autumn, and it sits there quietly as a reminder all season long. Once Yule boxes come out, it gets packed away again like everything else. But this year, something shifted. As I was packing up all of the holiday decorations on the 31st, I found myself pulling that pillow back out of the fall boxes. Not because it was time, obviously, right? Not because it matched the season, but because it matched me. Because regardless of the season, I am truly thankful. And I realized I didn't want gratitude to live only in November. I didn't want it to be seasonal. I want it to be part of who I am, part of, the energy I'm building into my life this year. So the pillow, the big long give thanks pillow, well, it is back on my bed and I love it there. Because every night when I am getting ready to slow down, when I take the decorative pillows off the bed and I'm shifting into rest, that is the reminder I see. Give thanks. Not as a cliche, we talked about that back in November, right? But as a spell, a quiet anchor, a soft little whisper from the universe that says there is still goodness here. There is warmth here. There is so much to be grateful for. And I've been thinking a lot about the witch I'm becoming. I guess we all do when working on our goals, right? But more how she isn't some final destination version of me that, I don't know, I arrive at one day. She's evolving year after year, season after season, just like the earth does, just like the moon does, just like the wheel of the year turns without ever asking our age for permission. I love that because sometimes we get this quiet cultural message that growth is for the young, that like reinvention belongs to your 20s or 30s. And after that, you're just supposed to coast. But that is not how magic works, right? That is not how we work. We evolve at every age. We shed old skins at every age. We learn new lessons at every frickin' age. We become braver, softer, sharper, wiser, all at once, at every age. The witch I'm becoming right now is more intentional, more honest, less willing to repeat what no longer fits. I think that's one of the greatest gifts of getting older. When we just stop trying to become someone for the world and we start becoming someone for ourselves. And I love how it happens that a book will spark a whole new conversation for us. I'll be reading something, minding my own business, and suddenly a sentence hits me like a lightning bolt. And I'm instantly thinking, ooh, I think I need to talk about this with you. Sometimes it isn't even immediate. Sometimes it's years later. The topic is kind of still lingering in my thoughts, quietly sitting in the back of my mind, like a candle that never fully went out. It's just kind of waiting until the season is right. Waiting until my own life has shifted enough for that idea to finally click into place and become something I can actually incorporate into my practice. And honestly, that's exactly what happened with today. Our big topic did not come out of nowhere. It started with that book, a thread, a tiny spark, and over time that spark turned into something bigger. Like a strand in our witchy web that kept tugging at me, asking to be noticed, asking to be honored. And today, well, we are finally doing that. We are finally pulling on that thread, celebrating it, exploring it, letting it become part of our magic in a way that feels real and lived in. And I just love that, don't you? Like how wisdom finds us when we're ready, how the right words arrive at the right time, and how something as simple as reading a book can open the door to an entire new layer of our craft. Today, today it is about quantum physics. And if you've ever done spell work, set intentions, worked with moon phases, felt energy shift in a room, or, just like known something was about to happen before it did, well, you already understand more than you think you do. You have been working with these concepts your whole life. Science is just like finally catching up and trying to name them. That's really how I hope we get to hold this episode today. Not as, proof that witchcraft is real. We do not need proof. We know what we experience. Instead, think of quantum physics as a different language, a translation, another way to describe the invisible systems we already move through every single day. And I want to say this, if science has ever felt intimidating to you, like it has to me, or I don't know, like it lives in a totally different world than magic, you are not alone. A lot of us were taught that logic and intuition cannot coexist, that you have to pick a side. But the deeper I go into this work, the more I realize that is just not true. There is a quiet meeting point where science and witchcraft sit down at the same table. They nod at each other and they say, yeah, I see it too. So that's where we're going. That's what we're doing today. Not into complexity, it's into connection, into curiosity, into the understanding why things like intention and focus and timing and energy actually matter. Why magic works the way it does, and why you've probably been a quantum witch long before anyone ever used that phrase. No pressure to grasp everything here. No pressure to, honestly, even agree with everything. Just an open mind would be great, a little wonder, and the willingness to explore. We are not here to figure it all out. We're just here to notice today. All right, let's do it. Today is our first episode in our Witchcraft 201 series for 2026. And we are talking about quantum physics, where science meets witchcraft. Okay, so now that we are all settled and no one is expecting a pop quiz, let's talk about what quantum physics actually is, like in real human words. Not textbook words, not science bro words, just words that make sense to us. At its core, quantum physics is the study of the tiniest pieces of reality. We are talking tiny, 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 way smaller than atoms, smaller than anything we can see. And when scientists started really paying attention to that level of existence, they realized something kind of wild. Nothing down there behaves the way we think it should. Things are not solid. They don't sit still. They don't even fully exist in one place all the time. Instead, everything is energy, moving, vibrating, shifting, and responding. And this is the part where witches usually smile a little because we're like, yeah, that tracks. Quantum physics shows us that at the most basic level, reality is not made of stuff. It's made of energy. Matter is just energy that is slowed down enough to look solid, which means the table, the floor, your body, your coffee cup, all of it. All of it is energy first, form second. And even more interesting, these tiny little particles don't behave like little balls bouncing around. They behave like waves, like possibilities, like potential. They exist in a state of maybe, just maybe, until something causes them to take form. Reality doesn't start as a fixed thing, it really starts as a probability. This is where quantum physics starts to feel very familiar to witches, because in our world, we don't start with outcomes, we start with intention, right? We don't start with the thing, we start with the energy of the thing, the feeling of it, the desire for it, the alignment with it. Quantum physics isn't saying, here's exactly what will happen. It's saying, here are the possibilities that exist right now. And what happens next depends on interaction, attention, movement, choice, which is honestly such a witchy way to describe reality. So when we talk about magic shaping reality, we are not talking about pulling something out of nowhere. We are talking about working with what already exists in the field of possibility. We're nudging energy. We are aligning with certain outcomes, and we are choosing which thread to follow. That's it. That's the big takeaway for this little section here. Quantum physics isn't about certainty, it is about potentials. And witches, well, we've always worked in that in between space, the place where nothing is fully formed yet, but everything is possible. Now, before we jump all the way into quantum physics, I want to quickly talk about something that a lot of witches already live and breathe, even if we don't always use the word for it. And that's animism. Because once you see how animism and quantum physics line up, something really, at least for me, really clicks into place. Animism is the idea that the world is alive, not just people and animals, but everything. Plants, stones, tools, places, even objects we interact with every day. It is the sense that there is presence out there, not just stuff. Relationship instead of separation. And I know that for some of us, that belief was intuitive long before it was intellectual. You didn't decide to believe a tree had energy, you felt it. You didn't need proof that certain places held memory. You walked in and you knew. You have probably picked up an object and immediately thought, "Ooh, I don't like this. I don't like the way this feels." Or maybe just the opposite. "Ooh, this feels amazing. It feels calm." Without being able to maybe even explain why. Well, that's animism. Now, here's where quantum physics slides in quietly and says, yeah, you're not wrong. Quantum physics tells us that nothing is inherent. Nothing is truly lifeless. Everything is made of energy. It's constantly in motion. It's constantly interacting with everything around it. Even what we think of as, like solid, is mostly empty space and vibration. Matter is not dead. It's energetic, it's responsive and relational. And suddenly, guess what? Animism doesn't sound so mystical, does it? It sounds observant. Quantum physics doesn't talk about spirit the way we do, though. It doesn't use that language. But it obviously agrees that everything participates, everything influences and is influenced, everything carries information. Nothing exists in isolation, like just sitting there doing nothing. Which means when witches talk about working with energy instead of using it or commanding it, we are actually being incredibly aligned with how reality works at the most basic level. Animism gives us the experience of relationship. Quantum physics gives us the framework for why that relationship exists. That's such an important distinction for a lot of us, I think, because for a long time, we were taught that noticing energy in things meant we were projecting meaning onto them, that we were imagining it, that it was just a rock, or just a candle, or I don't know, just a place. Animism says no, you're in relationship. Quantum physics says no, you're interacting with energy. Both are saying the same thing in different dialects. I think this is also why we cleanse tools, we bond with objects, we talk to plants, and we think ingredients. Not because we think everything has a human personality, but because we understand that energy responds to engagement. Relationship changes the field. When you use a tool over and over, it carries pattern. When you return to a place again and again, it holds memory. When you speak with intention, the energy shifts. That's not fantasy. That is interaction. And once you see it in this way, I think the world stops feeling like a machine and starts feeling more like a conversation. Animism reminds us to listen. Quantum physics reminds us that listening matters. So if you have ever felt connected to the land, maybe protective of your tools, or deeply aware of the energy in a room, you are not doing something strange. You are doing something very old, very human, and guess what? It turns out very aligned with how reality actually works. And this is where magic just starts to make even more sense. Because when energy is alive and responsive and relational, then intention isn't wishful thinking, it is participation. Okay, so now that we've talked about energy like being alive and responsive and relational, the next part feels almost obvious, but it is also the part that really settles us into our bodies. Because once you understand this, magic just stops feeling mysterious and like that scary way and starts feeling practical. One of the biggest ideas in quantum physics is that energy comes first. Matter comes second. What we think of as solid reality is actually energy that is just slowed down, it has organized itself, and it has taken a shape. Which means that before anything exists in form, right, it does exist as energy first. And again, we hear that, we're going to say, yeah, obviously, because that is how we've always worked. We don't start with the thing, we start with the intention, the feeling, the desire, the alignment. We work in the invisible first, and then we trust the visible to follow. This is why spell work doesn't begin with action. It begins with awareness, and with checking in, with grounding, with making sure your energy is actually pointed in the direction you're asking for. Because if energy is the first step, then your internal state matters way more than the external tools. I think it also explains why forcing magic rarely works. When we try to push an outcome, rush a timeline, maybe demand a result, we are actually fighting the natural flow of energy. We are skipping the alignment piece and jumping straight to control. And energy doesn't really respond well to being bossed around. Magic works best when it is collaborative. Quantum physics shows us that reality is not fixed, it's responsive. It's not a locked script. It is a field of possibility that shifts based on interaction. When witches cast spells, we're not creating something out of nothing. We are interacting with what's already possible and helping certain outcomes take shape. This also helps explain why emotions matter so much in our magic. Joy, fear, desperation, confidence, all of those are energetic states. They carry information. When you cast from a place of panic, the energy feels different than when you cast from trust. Same words, right? Same tools, maybe. Completely different vibration. And this is why the feeling of a spell often matters more than the ingredients. The candle, the herbs, the crystals, those are supports for us, right? They help hold and direct energy. But the real work is happening in the invisible space where intention meets the field. That's where things start moving long before anything shows up in real life. So when people say, hey, magic is just in your head, yeah, they're missing the point. Your mind is not separate from reality. It is part of the energetic system shaping it. Thoughts are energy. Focus is energy. Choice. Choice is energy. And energy before matter isn't a metaphor. It's a process. Once we understand that, spell work stops feeling like a gamble and starts feeling like participation. You're not hoping something happens. You are aligning yourself with what you are ready to receive, which is honestly such a relief, isn't it? Because it means magic is not about perfection. It is, though, about presence. It is about learning how to work with energy before it ever becomes form. Okay, this next part is where things start to feel a little bit more magical, even to people who don't usually like the word magic. And it's one of my favorite pieces of this whole conversation. It is the observer effect. In very, very simple terms, the observer effect is the idea that at the quantum level, particles behave differently when they are observed. Just being watched changes what they do. We're not talking about being touched. We're not talking about being manipulated. We're just talking about being simply noticed. It's kind of crazy because that means awareness is not passive. Attention is not neutral. Consciousness doesn't just witness reality, it participates in it. This is where, again, a lot of us are going to go, yep, I know this. Think about how different it feels to move through your day on autopilot versus when you are fully present. Think about how energy shifts when you walk into a room already irritated. We've done that, right? Versus, walking into a room calm and grounded. Nothing external has changed, but everything feels different. Quantum physics is saying that this isn't just psychological, it is energetic. When something is observed, it becomes defined. And before that, it exists in a state of possibility. And that maps so cleanly onto how witchcraft works that it almost feels funny we ever we ever even doubted it. When we set intention, we are choosing what we are paying attention to. When we cast a spell, we are focusing awareness in a very deliberate way. When we create ritual, we are holding space long enough for energy just to organize itself. That is not superstition, that is participation. This is also why rushed, distracted magic tends to feel flat. It is not that the spell is wrong, it's that the intention is scattered. The observation is fuzzy. The energy doesn't know where to settle because we haven't fully decided where we are looking. Ritual slows us down on purpose, right? It says, hey, this matters. It gathers our attention, our body, our breath, our mind, and it points them all in the same direction. And when that happens, well, energy responds. This is also why intention doesn't mean to, wish really, really hard. It means clarity. It means presence. It means actually being with what you're asking for instead of just throwing it out there and, wishful thinking and hoping for it. And here's something I really want to normalize because it mattered and it matters still in my practice. This doesn't mean you have to be perfect or hyper focused or never distracted. That's not realistic. It just means that your awareness is part of the spell. It always has been. When witches say things like, energy follows attention, that's not a metaphor. That is a description of how reality behaves at a fundamental level. So, the observer effect. It reminds us that magic isn't about controlling outcomes. It is about choosing where we stand and what we engage with. We don't force reality to bend, we meet it, we notice it. And in that noticing, in that observance, things begin to shape, which honestly feels a lot gentler than the way we are often taught to manifest or hustle or push. Magic, it turns out, works best when we are paying attention. Okay, so now that we've talked about energy and intention and attention, this next part is where everything really starts to click together. And it's going to be about frequency and vibration. This is the part where a lot of us are going to go, ah ha ha, that's why it works. Quantum physics shows us that everything vibrates, like literally everything. Not just living things, not just people, everything. Thoughts vibrate, emotions vibrate, sound vibrates, matter vibrates. Even stillness has a frequency. There is no such thing as zero energy. Once you understand that, spell work stops feeling abstract and starts feeling like communication. Because we witches have always worked with vibration. When you speak an intention out loud, that's vibration. When you whisper, chant, sing, hum, pray, that's vibration. When you write something down with focus, yeah, vibration. When you stir a potion, light a candle, or lay out tools with care, vibration layered on vibration. Like we're not just doing things, we are tuning things. This is why words matter in magic. Well, everywhere I really believe words matter. Not because the universe is picky, but because words carry sound, and sound carries frequency. This is also why tone matters. Saying the same sentence calmly versus angrily creates a completely different energetic impact. And emotions? Emotions are huge here. They are not just feelings, they are energetic states. Fear vibrates differently than trust. Desperation vibrates differently than calm expectation. Joy, beautiful joy, well, it vibrates so differently than forcing something. This is why spells cast from panic often feel messy, right? And spells cast from grounded confidence, they feel cleaner. Same tools, same intention, way different frequency. It is also why we work with herbs and crystals and oils and materials the way we do. Each one holds a stable energetic pattern. Herbs carry the vibration of how they grew. Crystals hold consistent frequencies because of their structure. Oils capture the energetic essence of the plants. None of this is random. We are choosing ingredients based on resonance. Think of it like tuning forks. When you strike one, another tuned to the same frequency will respond. Spell work really works the same way. You're setting a frequency and letting the world respond where it matches. This is also why, like high vibration isn't about pretending everything is perfect or positive all of the time. It's about honesty. It's about alignment and integrity. It's about a clear signal instead of a noisy one. Magic does not ask us to be happy all of the time. That's not realistic nor reasonable. It asks us to be coherent, to know what we are sending out, and to notice when our inner world and our outer intentions don't match yet, and then gently bring them into alignment. So when witches talk about raising energy and grounding energy, cleansing energy, or just shifting energy, we are not speaking metaphorically. We are talking about adjusting frequency and about changing the signal before the outcome ever shows up. And once you start thinking of magic this way, it's less intimidating. You're not commanding the universe. You are having a conversation in a language that it already understands. Frequency is that language. Okay, let's just zoom out for a little bit. Because once we understand intention, energy, and vibration, the next natural question is, where is all of this happening? Like, where does this energy live? Where do these frequencies move and respond? This is where quantum physics talks about the quantum field. In very, very simple terms, the quantum field is the idea that beneath everything we see, there is an invisible field connecting it all. Not separate pieces floating around doing their own thing, but a shared energetic space where everything interacts. Nothing, nothing exists on its own. Everything is part of the same underlying field. We witches have had a name for this forever. I think we call it the web, the unseen, the space between, the threads that connect us to each other, to the land, to time, and to possibility. Quantum physics is basically saying that reality isn't built out of isolated objects. It's built out of relationships, out of interactions, out of influence moving back and forth through this invisible field. What, really? explains so much, doesn't it? It explains why synchronicities happen. Why, when you think about someone and they call, why signs show up right when you are questioning something, why timing matters so much in magic. It's not randomness, it's responsiveness. When witches cast spells, we are not tossing energy into empty space. We are interacting with the field. We are sending ripples through something that is already alive and it is already listening. And the cool part is, the quantum field doesn't judge intention. It responds to coherence, to clarity, to alignment. When your energy and focus and attention are pointing in the same direction, the field responds more smoothly. This is why consistency and practice matters more than intensity. Why those small, repeated rituals often work better than big, dramatic ones. You're not shocking the field, you are building relationship with it. I think this is also why magic feels so much stronger when it's rooted in place. Like when you work with your home, your land, your tools, your ancestors, your seasons, you are engaging specific threads in the web that already knows you. The field remembers interaction, patterns form, pathways open. So when witches talk about weaving spells, following threads, or pulling on energetic lines, we are not being poetic for like no reason. We are describing how influence moves through a connected system. And once you start seeing the world this way, stop feeling like you're doing magic to reality and start feeling like you are working with it. You are not separate from the web. You are a part of it. You always, always have been. Okay, so now that we are talking about the web, about, everything being connected through this invisible field, we kind of have to talk about time. Because once you stop seeing reality as separate pieces, time stops behaving the way that we were taught it does too. Quantum physics suggests that time is not as linear as we experience it. Past, present, and future are not clearly or cleanly separated. They really exist together in the field. Our experience of time moves forward, of course, but energetically, well, things are a lot more flexible than that, right? We hear this and we think, of course, right? Because so much of our work already moves across time. We work with ancestors, we work with memory, we work with future versions of ourselves. We heal old wounds and watch present day patterns shift. We set intentions now that unfold later in ways we probably could not predict, but somehow feel exactly right. Magic doesn't rush because it doesn't need to. When witches say, trust the timing, we are not being vague or evasive. We are acknowledging that energy moves through the field in its own rhythm. Things land when the conditions are right, not when our calendars demand it. This also explains why sometimes a spell feels like it like worked backwards, right? You do the ritual and suddenly an old memory surfaces, a conversation just shifts, a long-standing belief loosens. It's okay, like that's not failure. That's energy moving through time, rearranging things so the future can change too. Quantum physics gives us a framework for this by showing that cause and effect aren't always simple or immediate at like the quantum level. Influence doesn't have to move in a straight line. It moves through connection. I think this is why ancestor work is really so powerful. Those connections don't disappear just because someone isn't like physically here anymore. The field holds relationship, memory, pattern, love. When we work with ancestors, we are engaging in a living thread in the web, not reaching into the past, but interacting with something that still participates. Same goes for future self work, really. When you visualize who you are becoming, something we're all doing right now, right? Working on our goals for this year, we are not fantasizing. We are aligning with a version of us that already exists energetically. We're just strengthening that thread so it's easier to walk towards. Time in this way becomes less of a deadline and more of a landscape, really, right? You move through it, you revisit places, you heal loops, you open pathways, and magic works not because you're controlling time, but because you understand how to move with it. So I don't know if your magic hasn't shown up yet, it doesn't mean it failed. It may mean that it is still weaving, it is still rearranging, it is still making space. And trusting that process, well, that is not passive. That is experienced magic. Well, okay, after all of this, quantum physics, energy, animism, the field, time not being linear, the real question becomes, what does this actually mean for us right now in our real lives? Because this isn't about becoming more advanced or, I don't know, more powerful or just doing bigger spells. I hope it's more of an understanding about like what you are already doing and trusting it more deeply. For modern witches, especially, this conversation can be incredibly grounding. A lot of us live in worlds that value productivity and logic and proof. And I'll be honest, I do. I do value those things. Overall, we are told to move faster, decide quicker, and justify everything, right? When we work with magic, especially subtle magic, it can be easy to second guess ourselves. Quantum physics does not take the magic away. I believe, certainly my practice, it anchors it. It gives language to things we already experience. Why intention matters, why timing matters, why emotional state matters, why consistency matters more than force. It reminds us that we are not imagining connection, we are participating in it. This also means you don't have to perform your magic in a specific way for it to be valid. You do not need elaborate rituals every time. You do not need perfect focus. You do not need to be calm or positive or high vibe all of the time. What matters is coherence, honesty between what you feel, what you intend, and how you act. Modern witchcraft becomes less about control and more about relationship, I think. Relationship with your energy, with your tools, with your timing, with the field itself, with the web. And this is such a relief, isn't it? Because it just takes the pressure off. You are allowed to move slowly. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to revisit intentions. And you are allowed to rest. Magic does not disappear when you're tired or uncertain. It adapts, waits, and it continues weaving quietly in the background. This perspective also helps us integrate magic into just everyday life instead of separating it into ritual time and real life. Your thoughts at work matter. Your boundaries matter. Your attention matters. The way you speak to yourself matters. All of that is energy in motion. You are casting all of the time, really, not because you're trying to, but because you're alive inside, and energetic systems respond to that participation. And once you really feel that, like really dig down and feel it, you stop asking, am I doing this right? And you start asking, am I aligned? That shift alone is super, super powerful. Okay, so now that we've talked about all of this, right? Energy, attention, vibration, the field. The natural next question, I think, is okay, how do I actually work with this? And I want to start off by saying, guess what? You already are. This isn't about adding more to your plate. It is about becoming a little more aware of what is already happening. Quantum awareness in witchcraft is less about doing more magic and more about doing magic with presence. One of the simplest ways to work with this is to slow down just a little before you cast, speak, or decide. Not to overthink, just to notice. How does your body feel? How does your energy feel? Are you scattered, rushed, grounded, hopeful, tired? There's no right answer here. Awareness alone shifts the field. Another gentle practice is choosing clarity over force. So instead of, asking, how do I make this happen? Try asking, what am I aligning with? Or ask, what energy am I feeding right now? Those questions move you into collaboration instead of control. You can also work with attention intentionally throughout your day. Where you place your focus matters. What you revisit mentally matters. What you speak out loud matters. Not because you need to police your thoughts, but because attention is how energy organizes itself. Ritual doesn't have to be elaborate to be effective. Lighting a candle with intention, stirring your coffee clockwise while setting a tone for the day, pausing before sending an email and grounding yourself. These are small acts of coherence. And guess what? They add up. It can also be helpful to notice when magic feels a little resistant. Instead of assuming you did something wrong, ask if the timing is still weaving. Sometimes the field is rearranging things in ways that we really cannot see yet. So trusting that process is part of the practice. And maybe the most important thing of all, just be kind. Be kind to your energy. Exhaustion, grief, transition, those are all energetic states too. Magic doesn't disappear when life gets heavy. It just shifts into quieter forms. So working with quantum awareness is definitely not about perfection. It is all about relationship, about listening as much as acting, about trusting that you are a part of something responsive, intelligent, and alive. You don't have to force the web. You don't have to shout into the field. You just have to participate honestly. And that truly is enough. Well, I really hope I took some, at least some of the scary, intimidating edge off of talking about quantum physics today. This was never meant to be, super big or feel overwhelming or, be something you needed to get right. My hope is that it felt more down to earth, more familiar, more like a conversation than a concept. Because, at its heart, this isn't about science living up on a pedestal. It is about understanding the energy we already move through every day. If this felt approachable, grounding, hopefully, or even a little comforting, then we did exactly what we were meant to do here. And if parts of it still feel a little fuzzy, that's okay. Sometimes energy just needs time to settle before the meaning lands. You do not need to remember all the words we used today. You do not need to explain quantum physics to anyone. You don't need to label your magic differently or, make it sound smarter or more legitimate. I hope what matters is the way you've been feeling energy. Like that's real. The way intention shifts things for you. That's real. The way timing seems to have its own intelligence. Mhm, also real. Quantum physics doesn't change your magic. I think it just reminds you that you're not alone in how you experience the world. You are part of a living system, a responsive field, a web that notices interaction and responds to coherence. And you've been participating in that your whole life, whether you had a language for it or not. So, if there is one thing I hope you carry with you after today, it's permission. Permission to trust yourself more, permission to slow down, permission to stop forcing outcomes and start listening for alignment. Magic is not something you turn on and off. It is something you are already inside of. And as you move through the rest of your day, maybe just notice where your attention goes. Notice how your energy feels when you pause. Notice what shifts when you choose presence over rushing. You don't have to change anything. Noticing really is enough. And if things feel like they're still weaving, still rearranging, still not quite there, well, that doesn't mean you're behind. It means the web is working. It means energy is moving. It means you are in the process. Well, I do have a poem for today's episode, and of course, the moon update for this week. I'm gonna run over, grab those notes, and I will be right back. Okay, I do have a poem for today's quantum episode, and it goes. We talked today of tiny things, of unseen threads and energy rings, of sparks that dance before they show, and waves that hum beneath the know. Not solid first, not fixed, not still, but maybes waiting on our will. A whispered thought, a steady gaze, a candle lit in quiet ways. The web responds, the field replies, to where we look, to how we try. Not forced or rushed, but tuned just right, aligned with truth, with calm, with sight. So stir your tea and breathe it in. You've always known where spells begin. In focus soft, in trust held tight, in energy choosing form and light. No math required, no fear to face, just magic moving time and space. A witch at ease, a knowing grin. You've always been quantum within. Okay. The moon for this week is, let's see, for Wednesday, the 21st of January, is a beautiful new January moon. And it kind of arrived quietly, didn't it? But don't let that fool you. This one carries a very particular kind of power. It is a new moon in Aquarius. And this is not the type of new moon that asks us to hustle harder or fix ourselves. Instead, it gently and sometimes stubbornly asks us to think differently, which is just perfect for our vibe over the past couple of weeks, isn't it? Aquarius energy is future facing. It's innovative, maybe a little rebellious, and just deeply tied to the idea that there is more than one way to live, work, love, and practice magic. This new moon is not about following a template. It is about questioning the ones you've been using, though, without realizing it. And that is such a perfect way to begin a new year. New moons are always about beginnings, right? But Aquarius doesn't start with action. Aquarius starts with ideas, with perspective shifts, with asking, what if I didn't do it the way I always have? This is a mental and energetic reset more than a physical one. And for us witches, this moon is going to be an invitation to step back and look at our lives from a slightly higher vantage point, to notice where we've been operating on autopilot, to notice where our magic has felt a little stale or forced or boxed in by expectations, even expectations that we have put on ourselves. Aquarius is an air sign, which means this new moon works through the mind and the breath and the nervous system, and really the stories that we tell ourselves. It is a beautiful moon for intention setting that starts with clarity, not pressure. You don't need a perfectly polished goal under this type of a moon. What you need is honesty. So it's a wonderful time to work with intentions around freedom, autonomy, authentic self expression, community and connection. It's a good time for like new ideas, projects, or ways of working, and about breaking old mental patterns. But here's the key. Aquarius energy doesn't respond well to forcing. It really like wants space. It wants curiosity. It wants room to breathe. So instead of asking, like, how do I make this happen? Try asking, what wants to emerge if I stop holding myself so tightly? Ritual work under this new moon can be simple and thoughtful. Candle magic paired with journaling is going to work really beautifully here. Write intentions that feel expansive rather than like super rigid. Language like I allow, I open, I explore, or even, I am willing to see differently. Those are all going to align beautifully with this energy. And because this is an air sign moon, I think breath work is especially powerful right now. Even a few slow, intentional breaths before setting your intentions is going to help anchor them into your body instead of leaving them just spinning in your head. Aquarius may live in the mind, but witches, we know the magic lands when mind and body agree. This is also a beautiful new moon for witches who feel maybe a little tired of doing magic the right way. Aquarius reminds us that there is no single correct path. Your practice is allowed to evolve. Your goals are allowed to change. Your magic is allowed to look different than it did last year. And maybe the most important thing about this January new moon is that it doesn't demand immediate results. It really is planting seeds in ideas, right? Conversations, moments of clarity that may not fully bloom until later in the year. Trust it. Trust that process. Some intentions need time to weave themselves into reality. So, as we step into this new moon together, I say let's just keep it gentle. Let's keep it honest. Let's stay curious instead of critical. This isn't about reinventing yourself overnight. It's about opening a door and seeing what new possibilities are waiting on the other side. New moon, new perspective, same magic, just a little more freedom this time. All right, my Witchy Work Wishes family. Next week, we are talking about Imbolc, and I cannot wait to share this celebration on our Wheel of the Year with you. Till then, have a great rest of your week, a wonderful weekend, and I will talk with you next week. Thank you for joining me today at Witchy Work Wishes, a place to find your weekly inspiration for bringing your personal witchcraft practice into your business, work, and office. For more information and additional content, please visit me online at witchyworkwishes.com. If you want to send me a personal note, please email me at info@witchyworkwishes.com. And of course, you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook. Just search for Witchy Work Wishes.